Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and this is a weapon tier list for you guys. These are the best weapons I've used in Elden Ring. All of these are an S or an A. Basically, I'm doing the best weapons for this video, and we're going to start here with Arcane. So bleed can be really powerful. For a lot of people, they already know this. It's very much the meta in Elden Ring, given the fact that you get the percentage damage, and then some of the weapons can give you a ridiculous amount of AR base damage on top of those procs. So for how this is going to work, basically, I'm going to show clips, talk about them for a little bit, and then I'm going to show you the best weapons, at least my opinion on the best weapons for each type. This is my essentially god tier list for Elden Ring with incredible powerful weapons that can carry you through the game. And as I mentioned, we started with Arcane here. Also, if you're not on the Discord, definitely be sure to join that. That's in the description below. And if you're not subbed, definitely be sure to sub to this channel too. We've been doing a ton of content lately, and we're going to continue doing Elden Ring content all the way up until DLC, and then more content after DLC, of course. It's been a ton of fun so far. By the way, the weapons that we showed off here were the Scavenger Curved Swords and Mogh Sacred Spear, but there's a whole bunch on the list. I'm not going to show every individual weapon, but we'll go over each individual one on the list to explain why they're so good and how much damage and power they can truly do. Arcane is definitely a super powered class. Alright, so after showing a couple clips here, we're going to start with the S tier for Arcane. This is going to be really interesting. Let's do this. So if you're at level 125 or 150, I like the Scavengers, but if you're above level 200, then a lot of the other ones will beat out the Scavengers, Bandits, Beastmen. There's a whole bunch of options, but I generalized Curved Swords because they're so powerful. If you're hitting 4 times on jump attacks, the odds are you're doing massive damage and bleed. Twin Blades, I did the same thing. I generalized them because you're getting 6 hits on each jump attacks. Now, the Gargoyle Twin Blades are great, but the regular Twin Blades are great too. Anything where you're doing 4 or 6 hits on every jump attack is fantastic and is S tier in my opinion. Mogh Sacred Spear is also S tier for the massive fire damage and bleed it does. Marais Executioner can shred and even one-shot a lot of the bosses in the game. And then the Reduvia or dual-handing daggers is a quick way to build up bleed and massive damage. So all S tier. Now a step down from excellent back to great, we have A tier. A tier is now Morgott's Cursed Sword. After the recent buff on 1.09, Morgott's Cursed Sword is as powerful as it's ever been. Eleonora's Poleblade is another fantastic option for a twin blade, goes really well with Frost. The weapon art's an absolute blast to use. And then the Rivers of Blood was S tier, but it did see a little bit of a nerf, so I dropped it down to an A, but it's very easy to use the weapon art. And that sums up Arcane. The next up here is Dexterity weapons. Weapons that are mainly investing in the Dexterity stat. This is a really good class too. And as you can see on screen here, we're showing off Claws. Claws saw a buff on 1.09, so they're a really fun dex weapon. You can also do them in the heavy affinity if you're using Bloodhound's Claws, but if you're using the Raptor's Talons, you can go for dex. You can throw on Blood Flame on top of that and get high AR, high damage that stacks, while also getting bleed and whatnot too. That doesn't have to scale with Arcane. Claws are fantastic after the most recent patch. Claws are really truly better than they ever have been, and they can absolutely shred boss HP. Next up here that I'm going to show off, and this is going to make the cut too, is the Bolt of Gransax, which is a dex weapon that does a lot of lightning damage. The Bolt of Gransax isn't just powerful because the amount of lightning damage it does, it also has an incredible amount of range too. It's chargeable and boosted by the Godfrey icon. It's something that if you haven't ever used it, you're going to really enjoy it. It does fall off a little bit when you get to around New Game Plus 5 and later, but it is something that's always powerful in general, has a lot of range, and can carry you through the first couple new game cycles with ease. Let's get into Dexterity. For Dexterity's S tier, I have the Claws. Any Claws that you can get to basically A scaling are going to do massive damage now. Throw on Blood Flame and they'll do even more damage. The Scavenger Curved Swords, you can throw on a dex build with lightning and do massive damage. The Nagakiba is fantastic, the Bolt of Gransax as you saw there, and then the Antspur Rapiers would scale slightly more for Dexterity. You can get pretty much every status effect on. They're very overpowered. Now for A tier, I have the Hand of Malenia because it has really high AR for a katana, and it does have a fun weapon art. Bloodhound's Fang because of that unique and enjoyable weapon art that can dodge bosses. Very popular weapon there. And then the Dragon's King's Cragblade, which is also a dexterity weapon that does a lot of damage on the weapon art and is really fun to use too. Next up is Faith, and Faith is a really enjoyable one for me because it's my favorite class of weapon. I love Faith, I love strength Faith builds, and obviously we're showing off here the Blasphemous Blade, which is one of the most potent and overpowered weapons in Elden Ring, can carry almost anybody through the entire game. The The Blasphemous Blade is certainly no slouch. If you used it before, you know how powerful this weapon is, and it's absolutely S tier. Another one that I want to show off here is basically any weapon. We didn't really go over every individual ash for this one, but Black Flame Tornado is obviously one of the most potent and overpowered ashes you can use in the game. By the way, for Black Flame Tornado, I like the Grave Scythe, or you can use something like the Knight Rider's Glaive, and then we're going to show off right here all of the Faith S and A tiers. So for S tier, obviously the Blasphemous Blade's going to make it. It's incredibly powerful. We have the Godslayer's Greatsword, which has a fantastic weapon art in the Queen's Black Flame. The Magma Blades, which can absolutely shred boss HP. The weapon art scales primarily with Faith and does massive fire damage. Black Flame Tornado, and then the Black Knife is also incredibly powerful and has a lot of range. Now for A tier, we have a lot of the powerful Holy stuff because Holy does fall off a little bit in the late game, and that's the Sacred Relic Sword, a really popular weapon with a powerful Ash of War, Golden Order Greatsword, which also has an incredibly powerful Ash of War, and then the Envoy's Longhorn, which can destroy any large target in the game with ease. Now it's time to go into another fun class, and that's Strength Weapons. We're going to go over the S and the A tier weapons for Strength. Now, for strength weapons, they're really enjoyable for me because I like hitting stuff very hard, and the Guts Greatsword definitely makes the cut. It's one of the most powerful weapons, at least for me. You can get it rather early in the game, and it absolutely slaps. And the Guts Greatsword is something, as I mentioned, where you can get it so early that it can literally carry you through basically the entire game. And throw in Lion's Claw, Royal Knight's Resolve, some super powerful Ashes of War, and you can turn this weapon easily into an S tier weapon, give its massive AR. The fact that it has a substantial amount of reach too, I really like the Guts Greatsword. Is definitely S tier for me. And the other one I'm going to show here is the Starscourge Greatswords. The Starscourge Greatswords, by the way, saw a buff in patch 1.09. You might have already known that, but if you didn't know that, after the Ash of War is used, you can attack quicker out of the animation now. You can also spam the Ash of War slightly faster. Because of that, it is an incredibly potent weapon, and for the weight, you're getting a lot of AR, a lot of damage. You're basically getting 2 Greatswords for the weight of 1. It really, truly is an incredible weapon. Let's get into strength. So for strength, my S tier is the Guts Greatsword, which is incredibly powerful. You can get it very early too. The Giant Crusher and the Starscourge Greatsword. And then on the A side of things, we have Ordovis' Greatsword, which is a fantastic weapon art. Gets an A in strength as far as scaling. Grafted Blade Greatsword, especially earlier in the game, given the level increase, it's incredibly powerful. High AR too. The Royal Greatsword is also fantastic. It's basically a frozen version of Lion's Claw. Again, high AR, high damage. And then I like the Knight Rider's Glaive too, because it gets an S in heavy, and it can be really potent with certain Ashes of War. And last, we couldn't leave this one out. By the way, I'm going to do a separate one for staffs and seals. We're waiting for that, basically. I'm waiting for that to see if buffs come back first, and I'm going to do my own tier list for those as well. And then eventually, if you guys like this, I'll do an entire tier list that goes over the majority of the weapons in the game, although that one could take some time. But for intelligence and magic-based weapons, obviously we're showing off one of the most powerful ones here, the Dark Moon Greatsword. The Dark Moon Greatsword is seriously good bang for your buck. Not only does it do fantastic damage, you can use it at a range. The ranged attack does a substantial amount of stance damage, 30-something stance damage. And on top of that, after you use the weapon skill on it, you're able to use it for a minute at the cost of very minimal FP, making it one of the most useful sidearms as a mage. It's something that's incredibly powerful. Let's go over magic. So for the S tier side of things, because of their awesome weapon skills, I have the Wing of Astal, which has a really powerful one, and then the Dark Moon Greatsword, which obviously I showed off as well. They are absolutely S tier. And on the A side of things, we have the Sword of Night and Flame, because the beam part, in my opinion, is the more powerful part. And then we have Death's Poker, which obviously has an awesome weapon skill as well. And then Moonveil, something that's really good. It does fall off in the later New Game Plus cycles, but it can be a really potent intelligence weapon or mage sidearm weapon. Definitely fits in there. As I mentioned earlier, eventually I'm going to do a tier list for staves and seals. I'm kind of waiting to see what happens with buffs before I can get into those cool videos and whatnot. Hopefully eventually that's fixed. I still do believe it's a bug and it wasn't intended, but we'll move on and find out eventually. That is something that eventually I'll do a tier list too, and that should be something that's informative as well. Speaking of that, I hope this video helped you guys. This is my S and A tier list for each weapon category. These are the weapons that I believe are the most powerful in Elden Ring, some of the ones that I've used the most, that have carried me through the game, that have helped me specifically on later New Game Plus cycles as well. They're all incredibly powerful weapons. If you're not on the Discord, definitely be sure to join the Discord too. You're not going to want to miss out on that. I started a Patreon if you guys want to support the channel even further. Both those links are below. And if you're not sub, be sure to check out all the awesome builds that are on my channel. Definitely be sure to sub because you're not going to want to miss out on all the content. We've been doing a ton of content lately. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will catch you guys there.